Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Hamamoto. It is January 27, year 2022, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I'm so happy, so pleased, so gratified that you're here joining us on this live stream and in the video. And we have an extra special guest today. He's no stranger to this channel. His name's Mr. Manny Grossman, and I'll be introducing him in a moment. He's got some startling new revelations. So thank you very much. We'll be with him in a moment. But first, a quick announcement of coming attractions. This evening, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, I have the usual show with my friend and colleague, John O'Laughlin. That's 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's Macduff Live. So that's 1 hour from after this show here. And just to give you a brief rundown of what I'm doing here. And let's see, we have Kirby Summers, who I'm going to be interviewing very, very soon. She was on the show previously. She's the one that did this incredible book on Jeffrey Epstein. She'll be updating us on her research on the whole Epstein story. It's far from over, ladies and gentlemen. So you haven't really heard it all. If you hear Epstein and you tune out, you're making a big mistake. And secondly, she's doing some material. This is an old book. It's about this invisibility technology that was rolled out way back when, the Philadelphia experiment. She's got some really incredible connections, which I can't share with you now, but she's been giving me a little bit of preview. And then we have another author, and this concerns Mr. Manny Grossman himself, because I think that they'll be in touch very soon. But I'm interviewing in next week, this coming week, the great author Michael A. Hoffman II. And many of you know him from his book on, I guess you'd call it the Twilight Language. Well, that's this book here. This is his current book, and this is highly recommended. Whatever level you're on, if you're a newbie or if you're an advanced student of this material, this is definitely a good book to start. But the other one, where he talks about Twilight Language and Revelation of the Method, excellent book. That one's in storage already. I don't have it with me. And then I'm reading this one book. It's titled Adolf Hitler, Enemy of the German People. And you can tell that he's probably getting it on both ends. And there's some neo-Nazis that really don't appreciate his putting Adolf Aloysius Rothschild into proper perspective. I'm sorry, his name is Hitler historically. So we have that going on. So anyway, be with us this evening, and look forward to the coming shows next week. With no further ado, I will bring in Manny Grossman. Yes, indeed. Here he is. Welcome, Manny Grossman. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Professor Hamamoto. It's so wonderful to see you once again, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. And man, I've been just astounded, like probably everybody else.
Including myself.
Oh, isn't that great, that eureka phenomenon?
Yes.
And I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but just before we went live, you were talking about some news.
Yes.
Maybe definitive connections for next week. Did you want to just touch on it, or you want to keep it a surprise?
No, I'll let the audience in on what's going on in Son of Sam land in terms of something happening this weekend, which is going to shatter the paradigm. I have a research partner that came on board a couple months ago who goes by the name Neo. Everybody on my Subscribestar knows and loves Neo. Neo is, let's just say, he's extremely hooked up in Yonkers, and pairing up with him has been really revelatory. Not only for the Son of Sam, but just in terms of making a new friend. It's been a fantastic experience. But we found out something on the famous Wicker Street. And those of you who are Son of Sam heads know Wicked King Wicker. Well, we found out something on Wicker Street vis-a-vis this family called the Neto family. The Neto family was terrorized by David Berkowitz. But what a lot of people don't realize, and what we did not realize until a couple of weeks ago, was that the Neto story actually changes everything. I'm not going to give too much away. I have a video sort of pseudo documentary coming out this weekend on my Subscribestar, which is literally the first brand new theory on Son of Sam since Maury Terry's book has come out. And we didn't need to go international. We didn't need to go national. We didn't need to go to the process or any satanic cults. Hell, we didn't even need to go to Untermeyer Park. We stayed local on Wicker Street, and we found what we think are the answers. So we're looking very forward to that, Professor. And you know that I'm going to be coming back on your show to do a show about this. You just know it, right?
Please, please, I'm inviting you in advance. Your working method and the energy and intelligence, analytical savvy, that's really making a big difference. And it's also opening up new avenues for independent research, right? Instead of
Absolutely.
criticizing these institutions, whether it be university, medical, or journalism, why bother? Let's just do it ourselves.
Let's just do it ourselves.
Cut out
Exactly.
the middleman. All
Yeah,
right.
we
And by
don't
the
need
way,
these. Yeah.
Neo, yes, the one is in the chat right
Oh,
now.
all right. Well, Neo,
Okay.
yes, the one has quickly become my partner in, well, I don't want to say in crime, but he's become my absolute partner in this, and equal partner. In fact, I actually think that he's more important than me, because I'm only the face of this. I mean, I do quite a bit behind the scenes, but I rely on my team, and I value every member of my team, and every one of them has their own strengths. But Neo has emerged as the guy in Yonkers, and he just knows everybody. And Yonkers has opened up for us ever since he's come on board. So Neo,
Incredible.
good
Well,
to see you.
welcome,
Yeah.
Neo, and welcome, Yonkers, and of course, North Bronx.
Oh yeah, of
Or
course.
Bronx.
Where I'm sitting right now, and I got my Ibanez out in honor of Professor Habamoto
I
today.
know. Yeah. Incredible. Hey, listen, ladies and gentlemen, Manny sent me a video here, and we're going to be running it here, and Manny is going to be pointing out some of his incredible finds as of late. And so I'm going to put that on right now and let Manny run with this.
Well, let me
So,
just intro it
oh yeah,
first, if you will,
sure.
if I may, Professor. All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much to Professor Hamamoto for allowing me this forum to be able to tell you guys this story. I know that not many people out there in YouTube land particularly want to pay $5 a month to join my Subscribe Star, where you get to see all of this amazing information to your heart's content. And I respect that. Maybe not everybody has the money or can afford it or whatever. And so I want to let the YouTube audience, and of course a new audience, Professor Hamamoto's audience, know all about what we have just discovered in Untermeyer Park as a direct result of the work that we've been doing in Yonkers. It would never have been able to been found any other way. And of course, just like a lot of my other research, it does raise quite a lot of questions. It doesn't answer very many, but it's one thing that we have recently found. And this is basically the story of the cross on the tree. So what's the story of the cross on the tree? Well, it all really begins in Untermeyer Park. And I think, and you can run that. And I think before we talk about the discovery, I think it behooves us to talk a little bit about Untermeyer Park itself. Now, unfortunately, Craig was not able to join us today, but he's been on my show enough. If you wouldn't mind pausing this, Professor. So this is the relief that's on top of the doors to the main gardens at the famous, or I should say infamous, Untermeyer Park and Gardens in Yonkers, New York, scene of much occultic activity from, well, we have documented activity starting there in the 1950s. Of course, a lot of people feel that Samuel Untermeyer and his buddies were probably doing stuff way back when. But the first documented story of occult activity in Untermeyer that I've personally have spoken to an eyewitness, unfortunately a victim about, took place in 1951. And Artemis is who this park is dedicated to. Artemis is the goddess of the hunt, the goddess of Bacchanalia. In fact, if you want to press play, Professor.
Now, is that Artemis, the bas relief in the lintel there?
Correct. And the lintel stone up there, the entire gardens, the park itself is a temple dedicated to the goddess Artemis. And this, as has been pointed out to me, if you wouldn't mind pausing, Professor, this is extremely important to our story. The fact that this particular goddess was chosen because, and again, I'm not the occultic expert. I'm kind of running on memory on this. Craig is the one who'd be able to do this justice. But if you just read this, Artemis has been one of the most cruelest and most vengeful of the deities. In some cases, she would become angry and punish human beings even if they had done nothing wrong. She was a virgin goddess, and she was accompanied by nymphs who were also expected to remain virgins. If any of these nymphs slipped up and lost their virginity, Artemis treated them very harshly. One such attendant was Callisto, whom Zeus raped. All right, so here we have the story of rape, gods treating people poorly, cruel and vengeful gods. This is the god that Samuel Untermeyer decided to dedicate his park to. It's a little strange to me. But what we're going to be exploring today, and if you don't mind, Professor, you can press play. What we're going to be exploring today. Oh, and right here, just real quick, this is kind of interesting. If you just go back to that, Professor, if you don't mind, I'm sorry. So this is kind of interesting. Thank you. So you see here in this picture on the right, that's the Temple of the Sky, right? And that's in Untermeyer Park, right in the gardens there. And what I never knew, and what was pointed out to me by the great Craig Fitzgerald, is that Medusa, whose relief there, whose face is on the floor of this temple, she is actually covered up by a statue of Artemis right there. So her image, her visage is actually covered up by Artemis. And it was pointed out to me that these are dual goddesses. Artemis is, Medusa is the shadow self of Artemis. So there's a lot of thought that these people gave to designing this park. And on an upcoming show of mine, we're going to be diving much more into the occultic symbology of Untermeyer Park. And Craig, in fact, has decoded Untermeyer's tomb at Woodlawn Cemetery, and the deciphering of that tomb connects directly to a Son of Sam letter as well. We're going to keep that in as a surprise for you guys for now. But what we're dealing today is with, and just keep it paused here if you wouldn't mind, Professor, is urban myths, right? We've all heard of urban myths. We all know urban myths, and usually they're not true. They're just legends, right? And there's an urban myth for everything out there. Well, this is an urban legend today that actually came true, an urban myth that I actually found. And I'm not saying that I was some genius. I found this because of this video series and the people that we spoke to in this video series. So the cross on the tree, let's start this, Professor, if you can press play. So early on in my video series, of course, as a Son of Sam researcher, I realized that you couldn't do Son of Sam without talking about Untermeyer Park. The two were inextricably linked in the public mind. If you wouldn't mind pausing it.
Oops.
Oh, I think you went back to the beginning. It's all right. The two are inextricably linked in the public mind, right? Untermeyer Park and Son of Sam. And why is that? Well, the reason why is because of the legacy of Maury Terry. Maury Terry equated the satanic activity in Untermeyer Park, which is highly documented. In fact, I'm the only person in the world that's actually brought out eyewitnesses to this stuff in my video series. But Maury did not, unfortunately, give us the nuance that was needed in that story. That's a whole other story, a whole other thing. But as part of our Untermeyer series, what I wanted to do was bring people who had eyewitness testimonies of, well, let's just say seeing either occultic rituals, satanic rituals, seeing dead animals around the park, of which there were tons and tons. So Byrne was the first person that came. And you can see this is the middle of the summer. So right here, we're in the gatehouse at Untermeyer Park. You could press play. Byrne was amazing. She was showing us right here where she had witnessed a headless, dead German Shepherd. Pause it right here if you wouldn't mind. A headless dead German Shepherd in 1976. Interestingly enough, just about a day or two before the shooting of Carl Denaro, the second Son of Sam victim. So she's convinced that this was the cult meeting to, before going out to shoot Carl. Well, I think that the story is probably a little bit more nuanced than that. But regardless, Byrne was an important eyewitness, and she was our first. One of the very important things about Byrne and introducing her to the video series was that she told us about this doctor. And Professor, you may like this. In fact, I think you are going to like this because you got heavily into the whole Dr. Gajusek thing. Well, I got another sick doctor for you to research. You're going to want to look up this guy, Dr. Albert Laverne. Now, why did Byrne bring up Dr. Albert Laverne? Well, it turns out that this sick Dr. Laverne, who invented some weird gas treatment with like shoving carbon monoxide or dioxide on people's faces for them to breathe in, it was going to cure them of heroin addiction. Right? He had all these crazy, outlandish theories that he was a mad scientist and a mad doctor. He was also involved in the trial of Albert Cauley, the shooter of the in My Lai in Vietnam, which many people feel was some sort of weird, maybe Project Phoenix type event. And he gave testimony at Albert Cauley's trial, which was strangely expunged from the record, and no one knows exactly why. But the reason why Byrne brought up Dr. Laverne is because Dr. Laverne happened to live right at the base of Untermeyer Park. This guy lived in a huge mansion, which he bought from the famous Catholic Bishop Fulton Sheen, Sheen, who was a very famous televised priest back in the 1940s and 50s, I believe up until the 60s. Anyway, Laverne buys his house, and Byrne starts to see some strange things happening. She sees people going in and not leaving. She goes in there because she's friends with one of the Laverne's daughter, and she sees coffins in the guy's house. She's smelling the smell of rotting, decayed bodies. She's being chased by Laverne's two sons in Untermeyer Park with needles, saying, hey girl, right? So Laverne was an important character, I think, to bring up because it showed we never been able to prove a direct link to Son of Sam. Although it is interesting that Untermeyer Park is surrounded by all these weird mind-bending neuropsychiatrists. We have Dr. Laverne, we have Dr. William J. Garvin. But no one's ever been able to really pin them down. But it does introduce that the notion, Professor Hamamoto, that there were government-connected psychiatrists living around Untermeyer Park. They were within a stone's throw. Their kids were hanging out with these people that Byrne identified as cultists.
If I may interject, Manny?
Of course.
I have checked out Dr. Laverne. He's a neuropsychiatrist, and this was an emerging field at the time. But I'll send you some information so that maybe you can sift through it and see if it fits in. But I think there's a Bellevue connection.
Yes, Bellevue connection. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
And I found out the woman who ran the neuropsychiatry program dedicated to children in specific.
Oh.
And she would overlap this timeline. So that's another lead that you can follow up on. Please,
because as we are sort of turning Son of Sam into this from this international to this local story, because that's where the evidence seems to be lying, be heading. I certainly do not want to discount the notion that there was a higher power involved, right? Hidden strings pulling the. I don't want to discount that. It would be foolish of me to, but we've found no proof of it yet.
I think I've asked you this before we continue, Manny.
Yes, sir.
Are there any VA hospitals nearby, let's say in the Bronx or Yonkers?
Yeah, there's a huge one in the Bronx. It's a hub, a massive one.
Okay.
Right. I live about 5 minutes drive from it, maybe 7 minutes. I take my dad there all the time.
A lead if you can find some psychiatric nurses, people who have retired from the facility who might live in the area.
Okay.
I think they might be able to give you some great intel.
All right, great. And luckily I have a whole army of crowdsourcers behind me who are ready, willing, and able to, as long as I say, crowd, do your thing. All right. So Byrne was amazing. You can play it. So here she's showing us and here she's showing us the gatehouse, the famous gatehouse where all of the occultic ritual activity took place. Now, Byrne was the first person. Well, we'll get into that later. Actually, no, I'm going to talk about it now. So there's where she found the dead dog. If you wouldn't mind pausing it for a second. Byrne was the first person to tell me about the cross on the tree. Okay. And I think we have video of that later. So I'm not going to belabor it right now. And of course, she's wearing a huge cross right there. I find that a lot of people who go into Untermeyer Park with me, like, wear protective amulets. It's got a dark energy for sure at Untermeyer Park. But Byrne was the first person to tell me about the cross on the tree. I want to save it for a little while because I think I actually have that audio later. So you can press play. We're still on the Untermeyer series. And so this is how it all came together. I'm building a house for you guys. We're now in the foundational part of this. So Bern was fantastic. And she's still a great friend of the show. Just emailed me today. She knows everybody. Everybody knows her. That's what's been another great thing about this video series, professors. We're making great friends. So next came Tommy. Now, Tommy, unfortunately, is no longer really a friend of mine. He is firmly in the Maury Terry camp and doesn't accept our new findings. However, he did come out to Untermeyer Park with me. If you wouldn't mind pausing it. Tommy was a witness in the late 80s. He was there as a teenager in the late 80s in right where he's standing at the bottom of the 1,000 steps. He and his friends were hanging out. Now, they were not from Yonkers. They came to Untermeyer Park just to chill out, hang out, drink beer, party, middle of the night type stuff. They were down there and they saw brown hooded robed cultists down in that same gatehouse that we just saw with Bern. And they were having a ritual. And these cultists must have noticed Tommy. You can press play. Must have noticed Tommy and his friends because they started chasing them up the 1,000 steps. And Tommy said that he'll never forget it. He was with a friend of his, and there's the gatehouse down there. Again, just a different perspective on it. Pause it, please. And Tommy said he'll never forget it. He was one of the scariest moments of his life. He was with a guy who was like a real bruiser that night, like a real buff guy. And that guy was scared shitless. Excuse my language. He said that guy yelled out, "Run, run," right? And everybody just booked up that hill, falling all over each other. And so Tommy was an important person to the video series early on because, again, another eyewitness to occultic activity. Now, here's where it starts to get a little bit more serious, and you can press play. So when Neo came aboard as my research partner and friend, pause it, please. We found a guy named the Caveman. Now, I got a lot of crap for the Caveman, Professor. Why? Because he's a homeless guy who might be on drugs, may or may not be on drugs. We don't know. But he's a homeless guy. He actually lived in Untermeyer Park from 1980 to 1988. And he first came to the park in 1975 as essentially a 14-year-old runaway. Now, what's highly interesting about the Caveman is that we have subsequently found out more about him. I will never give his real name. But he comes from actually a very prominent Yonkers family. He must have either, said screw you to the money, or maybe he has a trust fund. We're not sure. The guy pulls out bills, like when we're with him, he pulls out bills, like the guy's got money, right? But he chose to live in Untermeyer Park. He chose to come there at the age of 14 in 1975. And what he witnessed was very important to us. And it just proves that you can't be an elitist when you start doing this research, guys. You can't be like talking to professors only, even though I love the professor here. You got to be talking to the people on the streets. You got to go from the streets to the suites, right? So the Caveman was extremely important. Why? Because he was an eyewitness to something very, very important. He's the only eyewitness in Son of Sam history who's ever been able to place David Berkowitz and John Carr and Michael Carr together at Untermeyer Park. He said he sold them drugs. Wow. And interestingly enough, he said that everyone in that park thought that Berkowitz and the Carr brothers were cops and nobody would hang out with them. And their group never, and remember, this guy's living in the park. He's there all day and all night. Okay. Even in the 70s, he was there all day and all night before he actually lived there full time. He says that that group of Berkowitz and Carr never, ever amounted to more than 6 people. And there were never any females present with them as well. Now, this goes against what a lot of the Maury people believe. They believe that there was a group in Untermeyer Park called the 22 Disciples of Hell, and that this woman named Susan Conway was the high priestess of the Son of Sam cult. Even I believed that at some point, because that was before I actually went on the ground and did my research and realized that none of these people were involved in any of this stuff. But what Caveman was, he was an important witness to that. But Caveman was describing to us the famous Devil's Cave. So this is the famous Devil's Cave at Untermeyer Park, showing, of course, the layers of graffiti. Remember, occultic activity took place over decades in Untermeyer Park, not just the 70s, not just 76 and 77 when Berkey came to town. So you're seeing here the original black graffiti that was written over by the newer groups. The white graffiti covered that up, and it spells OTO. I wish Craig was here to explain this a little bit more, but you said that you had made a discovery too, Professor.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was on the basis of that conversation that you had with Craig Fitzgerald, and he showed this symbol. He was decoding the symbols for you. He was showing the symbol of a double cross on the top, and at the base was that infinity symbol,
Right.
the Greek infinity.
Right.
And it has a name. It's commonly used in Satanism. It's
Oh,
called
no.
the Leviathan Cross.
The Leviathan Cross. Well, we're going to have
Exactly.
to get Craig on that one for sure. So anyway, so the caveman was huge. Now, so this is all kind of come together. So Burns, so you can press play. Burns, the first person to tell me about the cross on the tree. Okay. And I just filed it away in the memory banks. I thought it was an urban myth, an urban legend. Here's Maury Terry again. So here's actually the caveman himself, bringing us down to showing us around where the Devil's Cave used to be. Now, the Devil's Cave was demolished in the 80s, so it's no longer there. They built a parking lot over it. So the caveman, I can't even tell you how important this guy. I mean, look at him, right? You'd never think that this guy was one of the most important eyewitnesses of all time in the Son of Sam thing, but he has been able to provide us context, which we never had before. And I don't care if people think that it's crazy. Everything this guy has told us has checked out. This guy is money. So here's our next installment in the Untermeyer series. So this is Mr. E. Okay, now Mr. E is great. He was on the Unsolved Mysteries show. That's why we call him Mr. E. He's not a COVID cultist. He does that to protect his identity. He's one of us. He's a freedom fighter, conservative, patriot, Constitution lover, hunter, Second Amendment guy. He's a good guy. But here he is in the gatehouse. If you want to pause it, please do, because this guy, and you guys can go onto my YouTube channel and see my recent interview with him. This guy is the best witness of Untermeyer satanic activity ever in history, except for those who were actually performing in those rituals. This guy lived on the Aqueduct Trail. His house was on the Aqueduct Trail, just about 100 feet from the gatehouse, Untermeyer Park, maybe 200 feet at the most. And as teenagers in the very early 80s and mid 80s, they would see cars driving onto the Aqueduct Trail, stopping at the gatehouse. I don't want to go too into the story. You can watch that video. But he must have seen about 50 satanic rituals. He's seen countless and heard countless animals get killed, from turtles to dogs to chickens. He's found an entire cow at Untermeyer Park with his head cut off. Okay. So this is a serious guy. Now, he also confirmed that Caveman was who he said he was, because this is a guy who was actually there on the ground in the 80s, free range kid. He came across the Caveman many times. All right, you can carry on. So this is all coming together. I'm getting oral histories. I'm getting stories about bodies being buried in Untermeyer Park, right? All of these really warped things that supposedly took place in Untermeyer Park: death, satanic rituals, killing of children, rape, torture, death, all the stuff true crime people are into. You know what I'm saying? But again, until these four people came aboard, Tommy, Byrne, Caveman, and Mr. E, we never had really anything other than, some rumors here and there. So I'm just waiting for the next thing to come on. Maybe you want to fast forward. There we go. All right. So, but before we get into the cross on the tree and talking about bodies and all this type of stuff, we have to establish that Untermeyer Park actually was, and that surrounding area was a dumping ground. Okay. So here's very important. Here's our first piece of evidence. Please pause it here. This is huge. So this little blurb comes from the book of Detective Jim Rothstein. Do you know Detective Rothstein, Professor?
Oh yes, I've seen him in other videos. He's pretty prominent.
Right. He's a prominent. He was a vice detective in New York City from 1965 to 1980, and as part of his beat, he was assigned the sex trade, particularly child trafficking. Okay, so this is what this guy did. He hung out on Times Square. He knew everything that was going on in the city vis-a-vis those horrific crimes. So in his book, he goes in 1969. Now this is the 1969. Remember, we've already been talking about the 80s and the 60s. Notice that we have not even talked about the Son of Sam era, because Untermeyer Park, there's more nuance than just Son of Sam cult, 22 Disciples of Hell, David Berkowitz and John Carr. Those two are actually not even footnotes in the story of Untermeyer Park. But with vis-a-vis this, in 69, information was received from Ace Brown, a reliable source, who informed Rothstein that human and animal sacrifices were being performed in Untermeyer Park. Further investigation confirmed that apparently satanic activity was occurring at that location. In a building behind a high rock ledge, satanic drawings were found. That room that he's talking about was the Devil's Cave, which in 1969 was still there with those satanic drawings. So here we have evidence, albeit anecdotal, but we have evidence that at one point in Untermeyer Park's history, they were sacrificing animals, which we already have proof because we have the eyewitnesses, and they were sacrificing humans as well and burying their bodies in the park. This is important. Okay, carry on, Professor. So we're just going to go through these next few things here. So again, this is just evidence, right? Headless corpse dumped near aqueduct in Pinecrest. You can just keep it running. So this is all, police unable to identify hacked torso. This was in Hastings, which is not even a mile north. Mutilated body and trunk, believed gangland victim. Again, Hastings, not even a mile north, near the Graham School, which has also been implicated. So rewind this, because here's Mr. E talking about his father finding a body in Untermeyer Park.
My father did find a body once in a suitcase, and it was more that way. But
in this park, though.
Yeah. Yep.
What year?
This was back. Oh boy, I want to say in the late '80s.
All right, so please pause it.
Oh shoot.
It's okay. Get back to there. I got you covered, Professor.
Right.
So we've just seen. You're gonna have to go back. You're too far.
Wait. Oh,
there it goes. There it goes. So you just seen. All right. So we've established a few things. Again, just like the Professor Hamamoto is a trained educator and professor. At one point I was a teacher too, and I understand the importance of when you're telling a story, you need to build it up from the bottom, right? So we've just established a few things. We've established one, that Untermeyer Park dedicated to Artemis, a vengeful god. Okay. Number two, that in my video series, we have had eyewitnesses coming forward talking about satanic activity, death, ritualized killing of animals. And of course, then now we're talking about finding bodies in the park, right? So Untermeyer Park has a pretty messed up history, I would say. Would you agree, Professor?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So now it's going to start to come together, the cross on the tree.
Play?
Yes. This is huge.
And what about the markings I was told about those trees?
Listen.
Well, I'd love to
Supposedly
find
boys'
that.
bodies are buried under these trees that are marked.
Yeah, but
like you said, the tree gets so old.
you can't find those marks anymore. Even if they were
won't
done 10
find them.
years ago, you wouldn't find them.
Wow.
So interesting story, and I
crazy.
believe your friend, but of course no way to prove it. But that's something for a movie. Like that's something so cinematic.
What about this pit, you mean?
Well, just about the whole idea of some guy like walking around putting crosses on trees where bodies were buried.
Right.
Right. That's a very powerful image.
Right, and the guy I knew that passed away, he's the one that was doing experimental drugs back then. And he is the one that said that they marked the trees
Oh, by the way, speaking of
because
experimental,
of the bodies.
Okay, please pause it. So thank you, Professor. That was a very important moment in Untermeyer Park history. Potentially Son of Sam history. We're not quite sure. Although this does raise questions for Son of Sam researchers regardless, and we'll talk about that when we conclude. So I was just walking with Byrne, and she just blurts out to me that somebody in her social circle way back when, we're talking now in the 70s and 80s, right? Told her that he was part of these groups that were doing these nasty things in Untermeyer Park. That he felt so bad about what was going on and that what had happened, he had gotten a conscience and felt guilty, that he was going around Untermeyer Park and literally marking trees with crosses wherever there was either one, a ritual, where there was a rape, where there was a body buried. One of those three, potentially all three of those combined. And you saw how smug I was, right? I'm a person who is very, despite what people think about me, I'm very, very quick to correct myself and to admit errors. And I was extremely smug there. And even though I took her story as potentially true, I discounted it. I just thought urban myth, urban legend. All right, now we're going to get the next part of this story, and it's all going to come together beautifully. So the caveman adds his testimony. We're going to watch this, and then I'll explain what we're seeing. And this was recorded with Jason Goodman, by the way, so you'll see him in there.
So this is where you lived up here. It's kind of treacherous to get to, isn't it?
I did the one, damn it. There's a nice path coming this way, go around that way.
So what the caveman is doing here, guys, is he's showing us where he lived.
It eroded everything. There was some like 1,000-pound tree up the top of in the road. I brought it down.
This is wet, Manny. Be careful.
yeah, I'll hold you.
Thanks.
Did you?
You know, I put the tree across up there.
So we're in the middle of Untermeyer right now.
Changing the ecology, huh?
He's
Because
showing us this.
everything man does in nature, it affects it.
Yeah, every little thing.
He's not listening to a word we're saying. He couldn't care less about our extemporaneous. This guy's showing us where he lived, okay? But this is going to become very important, so let's keep on watching.
Yeah, nice pond made here.
Keep that pond and stream in your mind, folks.
In the pond.
Ponds, 3 ponds.
So you got a strong immune system. I bet you're not afraid of COVID.
Where did you live?
North. Well, there used to be one I walked sometimes for years. I had a log over across the top. Water comes out where that rocks are.
It's kind of a weird standing stone right there.
They're all over it. It's all glacier.
Didn't Craig say something about a crag? This
Well-
was a glacier?
This,
Well, glacier.
well, the glacier was on top of all this.
Yeah, it was 1.5 miles ice on top of us.
Yeah.
All the people that were using those SUVs 14,000 years ago.
Right. I wonder.
Fucking melted that
the.
glacier. So all them damn fucking Stone Age type people. They're the reason why we have no ice over our heads.
I know.
So
Where's
right
Paul?
here
Yeah,
is where
Paulie!
it's going to get very, very important.
Come on up, Paulie.
Maybe he didn't want to climb.
Yo, Paul. Where'd he go?
So now what
I don't know.
Caveman is doing here is he is remembering these 2 shafts.
Well, let's head over to the
Check this out.
crow's nest or the eagle's nest.
We could go that way.
There's another hole here.
There was a hole here.
28 feet down, that's what they said. Another one there.
28
So wait,
feet
there's a hole
past.
here that's 28 feet.
Right where he said. Another hole there.
Wait, what's this? No.
No.
So it's obviously been filled in. There's some rocks. What about that thing we saw with the acoustic phenomenon?
That's over there.
Oh,
but-
wait, what's that? That looks like rocks in a hole.
Where?
Okay, please pause it because I want to explain what we just saw. All right, this is coming together. And Professor, I know you're not saying much. I hope I'm not stepping on your toes here.
Not at all.
Thank you. I'm just so excited about this story. So, all right. So what the caveman just showed us there was essentially the area where he lived. But once the camera turned off, and I have two people who can verify this, in case anyone doesn't believe what I'm saying. Once the camera turned off, see, caveman didn't even want to be filmed that day. He was very shy about this. And in the original video, we actually changed his voice and we blurred him out. But ever since then, he's kind of calmed down. He's you know, cool, a lot cooler with us now. But when we turned off the camera and he took off his mic that day, and in that same area, he said to us in no uncertain terms, my friend, he said, this is where they buried bodies in Untermeyer. This was essentially the burial ground. They would throw them down these 28-foot shafts and just throw garbage on them, right? And then over time, those shafts filled up with erosion, silt, mud, debris, garbage. They filled them up. And so in that area that he just brought us to, he said, were bodies. Let's carry on, because now we're going to start to get this together. Now, Maury's mystery man comes into in my life. So I'll just talk about this. So Maury had a contact who he worked with in Yonkers. This was more towards in the 2000s. This guy ended up becoming a trusted guy of Maury's, and Maury sent him on a lot of missions. Anyway, he calls me up. He says, Manny, you're doing great work, man. Love what you're doing. I want to show you around Yonkers. I have some stories to tell you. So we're walking around Yonkers this one day, and it's like around Thanksgiving time. It's, just starting to get cold. Leaves are off the trees. And he's walking me around the North Broadway area of Yonkers. There's the famous gatehouse where all the satanic activity took place. We're walking around Yonkers, and he's showing me all the spots on North Broadway where kids were kept in basements, where there were bodies buried in backyards, where this doctor was doing this to that person and that doctor was doing this to this person. We went, and then he brought me down here into the gatehouse, and he showed me something that I actually hadn't seen before or noticed. So I knew that this guy was the real deal. And again, he was a very, very trusted confidant of Maury Terry himself. So we're walking around, we're seeing all this stuff in the park. Maybe, we're going to go into the back room in a second. And again, this is the same spot right here where Burns saw the headless dead German Shepherd. So this guy brings me back into the back here of the gatehouse, and we go into this little room, and he's like, hey, did you ever look up on the ceiling? And I was like, no, I never even thought to look up. He goes, well, just look up, right? Here's a great life advice. Just look up, because look at what you're going to find. Pause that. Do you see what I see, Professor?
Yeah, it's a 5-pointed star, is it? Or 6-pointed?
Exact five pointed. Yeah. And
Yeah.
It's in that same white paint that is in those pictures of the Devil's Cave, which is highly interesting. So, all right, this guy's the real deal. You can press play again. He's showing me around, and we're walking around the park. And then finally he says to me, did you ever hear of the cross on the tree? Right? And my freaking antennas perked right up. Please pause it for a second there, Professor, because here I had heard from Burns 6 months before, right, about the crosses on trees in Untermeyer Park where bodies were buried or where there was a ritual. And I smugly, I'm going to admit it, I smugly said, well, nice story, but no way to prove it. Well, I'm walking around. This guy says, you ever hear of the cross on the tree? And I said, the cross on the tree? You know about it? He goes, I kind of know where it is. I wasn't sure. Maury Terry knew about it as well, but Maury never showed me exactly where it was. He only showed me the area. And in fact, Maury sent him 1,500 feet in the opposite direction from where it was, right? Which is kind of curious and interesting in and of itself. But anyway, so bring it back to that video. So we're walking around, Professor, the same area the caveman brings us to. And how do I know that? Pause it. There he is. There's that. Just rewind just a couple of frames. There we go. You see that log sitting there? Professor?
Yeah.
In the middle
Right.
center, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, remember, caveman brought us up to the areas where the bodies were buried. Okay. Now, so notice that log. Please press play. And again, I'm doing this just to prove this point. Here's the caveman. There's that same log. It's the summertime, but that's the same exact log. He's showing us right there. These are where the bodies are buried, right? Now, he didn't show us this on camera. He told this to us off camera. So now all of a sudden, my spidey sensors are going up because this guy, Maury's contact, is bringing me to this area where there's supposedly this cross on the tree where supposedly bodies are buried. And damn it, it's in the same exact area that the caveman brought us to tell us that there were bodies buried. So I'm excited. You can keep it playing. I'm getting very excited, right? And we're walking around this park. There's that log. There's the shafts right there, that area right off to the right. And we're walking and we're walking. And, you know, I'm just kind of like looking around. This is video I took, you know, a couple months ago of the cross. And I'm walking around and we're kind of standing there and in this area. And I go, oh my God, there it is. Right. And I'm getting the timing of this all wrong because it should have showed by now. But this is the area where the cross is, and we're going to see it in less than 30 seconds. So this is the exact area. I walk down to this tree down here because I notice it. So I'm the first person in the world that actually has found this thing. And for some reason, some little piece of bark catches my attention. And I go, there it is. And we walk up to this tree and lo and behold, boom, right there. I mean, it overwhelms me every time I look at it because here it is, right? Here's an urban myth, an urban legend coming true in the flesh, in real time in my life, to something that I've been looking at for 30 years now, which is the whole notion of what the hell took place in Untermeyer Park, right? So here we find it. And if you look at that cross, it's old. As a professional horticulturist and botanist, I can say for sure that was definitely done in the late 1970s to early 80s. That thing grew with the tree. It must have been carved deeply in order to stay there because bark flakes off. Bark is like your skin. It sheds. So for that to be so deeply there and embedded, you can press play because we have plenty of more video of it. So for that to still be there after all these years is unbelievable. And there's one further piece of this story, which I'm waiting to hit you guys with. And it involves Craig Fitzgerald, the great occult expert who's on my team. So anyway, here's just more pictures. Here's just more video of it. Do you have any thoughts of this, Professor?
Do you intend on publicizing where this is?
If anybody wants to find it, they can easily retrace my steps, but I'm not going to actually give a map. No.
Yeah, because I'm worried about some of these cultists coming back to reclaim the area and further defile it.
Exactly. And it's funny that you mentioned that because the story that I'm about to hit you with next, which was the final piece of the puzzle that confirmed all this for us, is kind of about that very same thing. But I kind of forgot where this is in the timing of everything. Can you fast forward just a little bit?
Sure. Thanks.
So let's just let it play from there. But I agree with you. I told people in the video, I said, this is potentially a tombstone, right? It's a marker of something. Someone went through a lot of trouble to put that in there. So I said to anybody in my audience, I said, woe betide to anybody who comes and messes with this thing or screws with this thing because it's not protected. I would like them to cut that out and to encase it in resin and put it in a museum. So here's where the circle is complete. So pause it for a second, please, Professor. That's all right. I got your back. I want to do another little recap here. So we have established that Untermeyer Park dedicated to Artemis. It was a playground for occultists for decades. Lots of bodies found in that park. Lots of eyewitnesses to satanic rituals and animal sacrifices. We have Ace Brown, the Hinge, who I've spoken about many times on my video series. He was a pimp from Yonkers who used to traffic kids from Times Square to Untermeyer Park. He's telling Detective Rothstein in 1969 about bodies. Fast forward, we speak to Byrne. She tells us about this urban myth. Caveman brings us to the same spot that we end up finding the tree in. This is the final piece of the puzzle. Craig Fitzgerald brought it all together for us. Please press play. So he actually did complete the circle on this, and his personal story is amazing. So of course, Craig is a great guy, absolute genius, total amazing dude. And here we are up in upstate New York on one of our walks where we talk about forbidden archaeology and all of the crazy anomalous stone structures. Anyway, can you rewind that for a second? Because that's Craig as a kid. And this is important because Craig is a Yonkers kid. Okay. He grew up on the streets of Yonkers. He grew up hanging out in Untermeyer Park. Right. So the picture that we're going to see of him and his older brother in a second are him and his older brother at right by the gatehouse right there. Those steps will be familiar to anybody at Untermeyer Park. Those are the steps right at the gatehouse. So look at that little evil grin of Craig's. He's a little kid right there. Please press play. So Craig's mother had a boyfriend who went by the name of Pat Garrison. Please pause it. Pat Garrison is pictured right here. Now, why is Pat Garrison important? Because Pat Garrison is another one of these people who was a cultist, a devil worshiper, a Satanist at Untermeyer Park. He hung out with the caveman. He knew the Carr brothers. He knew Berkowitz. He was another eyewitness. He was telling Craig, when Craig was like 10 years old, about these stories of Berkowitz and Carr and the Satanists at Untermeyer Park. Please press play. So Pat Garrison is another one of these unknown people that we were never told about that may play a much more important role in this story than we ever thought. And so Pat Garrison, so pause it right here. So I get very excited and I tell, so again, this is the area where the cross was, and I call up Craig because Craig's in the inner circle, and I run all of my revelations to my inner circle before I ever make them public. And I said to him, dude, we might have found where the bodies were in Untermeyer. He said, he goes, and I tell him the story of the cross. And he goes, hey, Manny, does there happen to be a stream in that area, a little pond or stream? And I lost it right there, Professor Hamamoto. I said to myself, how did you know this? He said, well, Pat Garrison, again, the eyewitness to Berkowitz and Carr in Untermeyer Park, a member of a satanic faction at Untermeyer Park that was not involved with Son of Sam in any way, shape, or form. But he said to Craig when Craig, I don't know exactly when he told it to him, but he said that he knew about these areas where the bodies were buried in Untermeyer, and that he went to a stream that was located right near where the bodies were, and he rerouted the stream in order to purify the area, kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, people coming there to try to ritualize the site. He was trying to do it in a positive way. But that right there was full circle. You have Byrne telling me the story. You have Caveman bringing me to the same spot. You have me finding the cross in that same spot. And then Craig's story of Pat Garrison knowing that area was where the bodies were buried, all converging on this one pinpointed spot in Yonkers, New York, in Untermeyer Park, right here where the cross on the tree was. Now, I could take this even further, but I'm not, because I have to do a little more research. I'm going to be going out probably tomorrow to do this. We have a picture, and unfortunately I don't have it handy, but it's a picture of a potential ghost in Untermeyer Park taken by a friend of a friend. Well, damn it. it turns out it's in the exact same spot that the cross on the tree is. So I'm going back with my camera. I'm going to pinpoint where that picture was taken of the ghost girl. I'm going to pinpoint where the cross on the tree was. And I'm going to try to, because the girl's pointing in the photograph. And I'll send you a picture of this, Professor. I should have had it in here, but I don't. So we may
I
even have
another potential lead.
Okay, tell me.
In this whole region, especially upstate New York, we talked about Rochester, and George Eastman and his background. But leading up into this area, like late Victorian, Edwardian period, even America, upper middle class people, the type of people like Samuel Untermeyer were involved with photography. And one of the incredible subsets, not just the pornography and the nude, not daguerreotized, but sepia tone photography, was spirit photography. There's a whole subgenre of photography. And back then, only wealthy people can do photography.
Could do it, right? They had the technology and the ability to print out the
dark
photos,
rooms,
right?
They had the means. But that also intersects with later on when a couple of other photographers, this is before the age of digital photography, enter into the story. And that's in the Terry book as well. In fact, one of them was murdered with his girlfriend.
Oh, right. Sisman, right. Sisman,
yes,
exactly.
Sisman and Plotzman.
That gets into the whole issue of the snuff film, which, by the way, Caveman says he saw. So that would be very interesting to flesh that out, by the way.
So this would be a good time to put out the word for amateur photographers, especially people with dark rooms and people with collections of photographs going back to the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to get a paranormal guy out to Yonkers. So far, no one's interested, which is weird because you'd figure that this would be a story that would amaze people. So as we conclude, Professor, the issue then is, of course, what this all means. And I would caution anybody to make any direct Son of Sam links because, again, Untermeyer Park was an occult playground for probably 100 years. Son of Sam was 1976 to 1977. And the only eyewitnesses that we actually have of Berkowitz and Carr in that park said that they were couple of losers who hung out by themselves and who everyone thought were cops and no one interacted with, which is interesting to me, actually, as an aside. So, but it could be Son of Sam. We don't know. The issue is we don't know. The issue is what's in this ground and what may still be able to be found and who can do this work for us. And the only people who can are the authorities. And interestingly enough, it was this story, Professor, and I'm making a big exclusive announcement right here for the world. This story got the Yonkers Police Department extremely interested in the work that I'm doing. And the next day after finding it, I had the head of the cold case squad out in Untermeyer Park and a major captain with the Yonkers Police Department. They accompanied me to this spot. Both of these guys are Ultimate Evil fans. They have the book on their nightstand, they told me. And they were heavily into it. You should have seen their faces when I brought them to this spot. Now, this was in November. It's now almost February. And they have, I wouldn't say they've cooled, but they've become a little more realistic. They're realizing that just the whole logistics of a dig, and there's so many entities to deal with, from Untermeyer Park to the city of Yonkers to potentially the Department of Environmental Protection. It's extremely unlikely that anything's going to happen. But the upshot of this occurring was that now Yonkers Police Department, I have them on speed dial. They're very interested in what we're doing. They're on my side. And I can call any of them up at any time with any thoughts, leads, revelations that I may have. And they take our work seriously. Why? Because have proven in Yonkers that well, in terms of Son of Sam, we're the only game in town. So this discovery has really led to major channels opening for me. In terms of investigatory ability, in terms of getting access to people. And it was only after this that I started to then get involved with the Netto family. And then the Netto family, as my subscribers will see this weekend, that story changes the entire story of Son of Sam. Forget about the process Okay. And forget about Manson and all of that stuff. It was all on Wicker Street. So this once again, Professor, raises a lot more questions than it answers. But my friend, isn't that part of the fun?
Incredible. Congratulations, Manny Grossman. Now, I just have one question. You're free to speculate about it.
Yes,
But
sir.
we've seen in reading Maury Terry's book and other true crime books that investigations inevitably hit a ceiling. There's a glass ceiling of it. And it's stopped just before the true power elite are implicated in it. And since
Definitely
there
true
is
in
no
Son of Sam.
statute of limitations on murder, what's going to prevent the incredibly brave and intrepid detectives of the Yonkers Police Department from again hitting that glass ceiling? Right?
Well, I think
Always stymies these investigations to where they really belong.
I absolutely agree with you. The only thing I can say is it's a new generation of Yonkers PD. These are the guys who are my age now, and they all grew up hearing these stories, and they're very interested in finding out what the hell. They're like a lot of these guys are obsessed with my video series. Okay, they're really into these questions, and personally, what I think has to happen is the mythical, the unseen, the completely locked away Maury Terry files, which are sitting there somewhere in somebody's attic collecting dust. They need to be put into use. They need to be given to the authorities, and the authorities need to be able to use this stuff to potentially, again, there's no statute of limitations on murder. There has to be something in those files that's actionable. So I call on whoever has control of these files to start cooperating with the very eager Yonkers Police Department, because there's things can still happen in this case. I truly believe that. And although I'm not here to solve the case necessarily, boy, would I love to see people in interrogation rooms. There are at least 3 people still alive to this day who need to be questioned intensely.
Well, I'll let you have the last word, but before we wind up here, I have full faith and confidence of the new generation of police detective and all the authorities, everybody that's been completely riveted and motivated by your incredible investigative reports here, Manny. I have full faith and confidence in it. The question I'm posing is that what about the hereditary silent elite that we never see? The people who are from typically the Dutch diaspora, right?
Yeah,
The
well,
Rensselaers, the Hofstras. Well, Untermeyer was German Jewish background, but
Right.
you have these families here who are multi-generational, who occupy that whole incredible riverine culture of the Hudson Valley.
Right.
See, that's where and I'm just speculating, but typically when you're talking about this type of crime, these people that were committing them were sort of like the foot soldiers of it, but behind it are these hereditary bloodlines that are overseeing it. They're doing the metaphysical work. They're hiring the professors to do the neuropsychiatric work, also
Yes.
to school them in occultic arts or to teach them photography. There's all kinds of different specialists that have to be paid for. And these are those, I think, hereditary elite of the Hudson Valley.
Yeah, and they go back deep, and they're the ones who are probably still with their families, still running things to this day. I mean, it's like goes back to they say the Phoenician army, right?
Right.
We as the people, we're in right now a battle for the future of this world. There's billions of
Absolutely.
us, there's 1,000 of them. What are you going to do?
And what's so beautiful is that you are looking at that elite system that goes back generations, right? These bloodlines, but you are looking at it in microcosm at Untermeyer Park and your whole Son of Sam, quote unquote, Son of Sam investigations. I call them the Manny Grossman investigations.
Thank you. Yeah, and they started out with the whole notion of this being international, and like I said, I'm still open to it, and I'm still, in my heart, an old school conspiracy head, and I believe in that the New World Order exists, and that the Illuminati are screwing everything up, and that we need to revolt against them. But my mind is changing on Son of Sam. I have to admit, Professor, I, as a fair-minded person who goes where the evidence lies, I have to be able to be honest with myself and realize that the evidence is showing me and other people in my team that the the crimes, the Son of Sam crimes might have a much more mundane and simple explanation than everybody thought. And they might not have been much more greater in scope than a 1 square mile radius of Yonkers. That doesn't to say that I'm not open again to the whole idea of there being huge, big hidden hands in this. Again, there probably are somewhere, but prove it to me. Somebody show me out there the process member who was actually meeting with David Berkowitz. I want to see the log of the meeting. I want to see, I want to see this stuff, because I'm going out there and showing people actual evidence from people's mouths who were involved, who were really there in those times. So that's what I want to see from other Son of Sam researchers, especially the ones that are a little recalcitrant and who don't want to even say my name, let alone accept my work. Hey, come on my show. Let's debate.
All right, wonderful. We'll leave it at that for now, and
Thank you.
please come back with your next series.
We're going to
of
book it soon.
startling- Please. And finally, again, Mr. Grossman, where can viewers support you?
Thank you very much, Professor. Well, I have my YouTube channel. Just type in Manny Grossman. I'm also on Subscribestar for as little as $5 a month. You can be a part of this. And if you just want to join for a month, watch the 50, 60 videos I have on there, and then end your subscription. That's fine too. I've also started teaching gardening again. So I'm just look out for that on my Twitter. I'm teaching botany classes for free now on YouTube, and I'm doing that mainly because hey, NYBG fired their best teacher. Now you can get me for free.
Gotta love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is Manny Grossman with the latest revelations. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you in an hour on John O'Loughlin's show. Mr. Grossman, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Professor.